Okay, cool. We are ready to get going, and Rhodey's opening it up with a question. Have you read The Land by Alaron Kong? I have not. I have not heard of that book or series, but if you have any insider references, please feel free to leave it in chat for myself or any others to consider. I love sharing books and resources. On that note, I did add a new section to the homepage, or to the page for the stream, that has a list of links to, well, not books, but to YouTube sites that you might find interesting to consider for storytelling, for learning mechanics of the game, for just learning about real life things that you can translate into your game. Something that I've been talking about throughout the week, and I'm trying to get it to a point where I'm gradually formatting the page, or I'm getting things set up, it's looking nice, and it turns to be a hub for you to visit and be able to find various resources. That way, we are operating on the same page as a broadcaster and audience, and you have all of these resources handy. Information is just that. We might be getting a cat here in a moment. Information is free to distribute, and the fact is, for any of you who are watching this right now, you might be the DM and you're running for 6 other people, heck, maybe even more, and you might be the only one who knows these things of your group. And while other people may know how to mix something together or a certain survival technique, not everyone at your table will. Or if one person at your table will, you will end up impressing him or her by bringing up this cool trick or something along those lines. Rhodey says, it is a light RPG novel, Game World Books, that they describe as SAO done right. I'm thinking of picking it up and thought maybe you'd like to hear about it too. Yeah, I'm open to options. You gonna come up, Raichi? I'm open to options, and if there's something to consider that is one of you considers a good source, then please, yeah. All right. Over this past week, we ended up making 4 different characters. Conveniently, that's the recommended minimum party size for D&D, both from what they officially say and my own personal experience. Oh, lit is in literary. Oh, okay, a literary. I must have misread that. I'm sorry about that. Here I'm thinking about like light novels, like Japanese light novels and all that, and a slip of the brain cell. So we made these 4 different characters over the course of the week, and they were all done randomly, well, with the exception of Gintillion, though he's included in here because he's a generated character. And I wanted to demonstrate how you can take 4 different individuals who each have their own circumstances and story and form them into a party, and that's what we're going to do first. This is going to be as PCs, both in and out of character, things to consider. And then we're going to take a break, and when we come back from the break, I'm going to get into how can we develop a bond between them, which can even include maybe a romantic feelings brought up, and I can address any questions on how to do that, both like in character or especially out of character. How do you and this other person, how can you develop this or bring it up in a way that's comfortable for everyone at the table, or even for the DM? Because if the DM was only just going to run a story and suddenly we have characters who are, bonding either romantically or that kind of Final Fantasy 15, like everyone's bros on the road trip and they just get these like really deep friendships, and you care about them. Like, it's not even so much about romance, but it's just about these forged social bonds, or social links. How do you go about doing that, and how can you handle that both in and out of character? Oh, no, I wasn't implying that what you were saying was a Japanese light novel. The concept of light novels is prevalent in what I do for a living, and just with me being a big old anime and manga nerd. That's just, it's like an autofill selection in my brain. They literally call him the father of American literary. Pardon the pun, I'm using myself here. RPG. Alright, so we have our 4 characters we made during the week. The first, well, I don't know if the first, I believe, was Hachilius Amadeus. Then we went into Mulsha Vichegda Bugrush. Followed after that was Ancora. Remember to roll the R. And lastly, we finished up character creation with Gentilian del Corin. They're all of approximate level, but their level's not really going to come into play with what we're doing, because we're going to be speaking somewhat mechanically, mostly conceptually. How are we going to form this party? Which, by the way, 4 is okay. I love running for 5. I think that's the sweet spot number. 6 is also okay to run for. Going more than that, as a DM, and even as a player, I don't prefer it. It stretches out the... it can stretch out a story. Everyone starts feeling a little less complete because spotlights are having to be shared among more people at a tabletop. You know, it's okay in certain instances if you want to run a big group battle, or you're not really in it for a deep story, but you want to, you know, kick in doors, kill monsters, or even just have, you know, some groups will just create characters to throw into a gladiatorial combat with each other and see who wins. And in that case, you want a bunch of people participating. So do what's right for you. In your average, whatever, 90% of the time game, you're going to find 4 to 6 PCs and a DM that are going to be sitting down and running. All right, let's form this party now. Our first character is Hachilius Amadeus, a neutral good male tiefling monk, Way of the Shadow, level 5. But again, we're not going to get too caught up on levels. You know, we can consider it a little bit, but not for what we're doing here. And he is an entertainer. The fun fact is, seemingly a jester, this martial artist is a lover and fighter both for the mayor's daughter, turning his shadowy skills into colorful displays. His rival competes against him in overt and covert ways, leading to a literal shadow war fought behind the scenes in Earford. This was hinting at some backstory that we had created. Oh, pardon me. Again, this isn't me being tired or you guys being boring. I'm talking a lot. I'm still, you know, getting used to this whole broadcasting thing, so my body's taking a second and going, breathe. It's okay. In and out. So this was part of his backstory, and this is why when we're randomly generating characters, it's very important to add in these little blurbs, these little pieces of history. And we've, just in this blurb, we've created a town, a structure, right? There's a mayor who has a daughter, and also, while we haven't fleshed out this character, there's a rival to this PC. So this is something then that we can consider, or if all of us, including me, are being PCs and we're going to collude together, which is what we're doing, to present to our DM. These are details that we want our DM to consider when, you know, she or he plots out what the story is going to be, or to weave it into a pre-existing mod. Sir Rhodey says, I am a rebel. I kick in monsters and kill doors. Well, that's absurd. How dare you, sir? Breaking convention, thinking creatively and jesting. This is D&D here. Oh, goodness. D&D on a Saturday night, even. Boy, it can get a little wacky. Okay. So that's our first... We're pitching a character. In a nutshell, here we go. There's character number 1. Character number 2 was Mulsha Vichegda Bugrush, a chaotic good male half-orc barbarian on the Berserker path. who was a soldier, and in particular, he was in a cavalry unit. Fun fact, he does hide a past trauma under a verbose exterior and eyes forward to the future for himself and his homeland. He paints his tusks the same color as his unique hair. Here, I'll bring him up real quick. Which the style is called a chuprina. Pardon if I didn't exactly authentically pronounce it. I tried to put an accent on it. A chuprina. To mimic a mustache. And that was brought up during the course of that character creation and concept. Because as a half-orc, we're imagining he has tusks. Well, the tusks jut up and might curve a little bit. Here, I'll try and get it right onto the camera. Well, so the tusks curve, and they kind of look like a mustache. Maybe for some reason he can't grow a mustache himself, or he just really likes this concept. So here he has this shock of, like, a chuprina is, think like a mohawk, but instead of sticking up, it's long hair, like from the forward back, that kind of goes into a ponytail. And so he has maybe a vividly colored one to match with his homeland's colors. And so he also wants to, because he can't have a mustache, he dyes his tusks the same color. So it kind of looks like a mustache when he's riding, his jaw is set, on the horse. And it blends in. The Russian orc, is Russian, very tough, survives the winter. Again, pardon my accent. I'll never stop doing them because I love the challenge and I love trying, but if any of you are native speakers, you are welcome to laugh at me. This is as much for entertainment as anything else. Then we ended up making another character named Angkora. Remember, roll the R. A neutral good gold dragonborn. A coastal druid, meaning, not all druids are just born in the woods and that's it. In 5th edition, there are 8 different sectors, 8 different land types that a druid could be from. That also bleeds into the same chart that a ranger is really good at hunting in, or has a natural exposure to being in, which leads to other benefits. She went Circle of the Land. That is more of the spellcasting focused druid than the shapeshifting one, though she is capable of shapeshifting. Pardon me. And she went with the hermit background. Fun fact, born on an island of dragonborn pilgrims, she discovered upon retreat a secret interaction of fire and water. While dogmatic in approach, she is very friendly in her search for the secret to this riddle. That particular aspect of a hermit, I believe, was number 5 that we rolled up randomly, where you, was it? Well, no, I'm sorry, that's part of just the hermit background, where you discover some kind of a secret. That background feature in particular does require you to interact with your DM, to come up with something that you've discovered, of a new philosophy, maybe a new way of governing people, a spell, or a lead on something. I had a character in a previous campaign who was a hermit, and her feature that we discussed was she discovered that the land that they were living on had a heartbeat. And not just, wind through the caves, or, not just, she herself had a little bit of bubble gut going on. When she was down underground exploring, looking for an ancient library of knowledge, she heard this da-dump, 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 and she followed it throughout more caves. She never found the origination of it, but she could swear up, down, and sideways that the land had a heartbeat, and there was a heart to the land somewhere. And by discussing this with my player, and through him, the character, I was able to flesh out a part of the world that would be a mystery to uncover. And the other players, as with your meta knowledge, meaning out of game knowledge, that okay, it's a hermit and there's this, and that means that me and my player probably colluded on it. But they all did an excellent job of in character going, what are you talking about? The land has a heartbeat? No one's heard of this. You're a crazy woman who just came up out of the ground, and we have some similar interests, but we're not going to believe you in this aspect. And so over the course of the campaign, little by little, they discovered there's a heartbeat to the land, and you were right this whole time. And well, that kind of went on to some interesting other interactions in the party, and even between myself and the rest of the group here. All right. Lastly, then, this was a character that I was working with, kind of, Delcorin from chat, because he was having a bit of a problem generating, kind of his first character for a campaign. His DM left him to it a little bit and didn't seem to be helping him complete it. So in the background, I worked on making a version of his character, just quickly thinking about it, going off of a few aspects that I learned from him about this character. And here we had Gentilian Delcorin, just named conveniently so that we knew with whom to associate it. The bard seduced the land. No, it wasn't quite that. Maybe I can work on an outline of the story of that campaign and present it. Oh, come on, breathe. In and out. There we go. The land has a heartbeat. Sounds like it's breathing, too. Ooh. But you know what? We manifested him in this world that we're creating together. And I wanted to include him because one of the aspects to his character, separate of what we rolled for Ankora, was that he was also a hermit. And in doing this, I came down and here's his discovery. He has discovered a partial answer to an ancient unsolvable riddle. As rumored, solving it will unlock the ultimate spell. Well, this was a character in a bottle at first. I made it to present to you all in the stream and to give to Delcorin as a way to, you could print it out, bring it to his DM, say, hey, can I roll with this? Or as a more complete character to bring to the tabletop, virtual or otherwise. And now, as PCs speaking to a DM, we can all say, all right, guys, girls, here we have a party of 4. What are we good at? Who's going to lead, or who's better at what? Or we all took our time individually and said, this is who we want to play. And we made these individual choices. Now that we've come back together, how can we do our best? Hey, Nikki D, welcome. We are forming a party, in case you just dropped in. I don't know if you've been lurking or not. We're forming a party with the characters that we've generated this past week and discussing how to weave them together, both in and out of character. And right now, we're discussing this as PCs who are colluding to then present our party concept to a DM. So yes, up here, by the way, if any of you want to check the PDFs, I will click over to them. I have all 4 members here. I can scroll down. You can look at the spell list or some other things here. And then here is a synopsis. Here's the splash, or the pitch. The 1-2 sentence pitch that we're giving for each of the characters. So now that we've each gone our separate ways, we've generated a character, and now we're coming back. We're each going, oh, that's cool. I've always wanted to play a druid, but that's fine. I'm playing the barbarian this time. And we're showing off our, for instance, the chuprina that Mulsha is wearing, and everyone laughs. Oh, the tusks as a mustache. That's a cool idea. Oh, cool, a gold dragonborn. Or there's even plots about, the player of Gentilian is saying, wait a minute. I'm a hermit and I unlock something, and Ankora is a hermit and also unlocked something. I wonder if our riddles could be related, because we're all playing in the same world. And all of a sudden, ooh, hey, some bonds are coming up, and eyes are twinkling, And also maybe some complications arise too, where you might find that certain skills or roles overlap. So how can you make the most of this? You including the dwarf sorcerer from last week? If that was Madman Mim, I'm not including him in this because Madman Mim was actually included in the story between. Let's bring it up here. Madman Mim, right here, our Sorcerer 6, was introduced into the story that we wove between Hjalmar Androli and Laricia Delcorin, of no relation to Gintilhin Delcorin. Those were indicators for the chatter that was we were interacting with together. Now, does that mean that this party can't run across Laricia, Madman Mim, or Hjalmar? Ooh, not necessarily. We can always do that. But for right now, we're kind of forming a party in a bottle, and then we will let them out into the world after we go through this exercise, and I explain this. But it's good of you to remember, Nikki, because maybe after we're done with this session, things will just naturally seem to want to blend in together. All right. So now we are sitting down as 4 players, and we want to work it out between each other, and the DM can be there too, or we're colluding separately elsewhere to then present to the DM just how we want to have our party exist. A good way of doing this is making a simple matrix. For instance, we look at who's better at doing certain things. Let's come over to Hecilius, and we can mechanically get an idea of who is doing what. And generically, the skills that he is good at are going to be acrobatics, insight, performance, and stealth. Now, in many entries, in 5th edition, you might only see 2 or 3 skills listed, especially for a monster. And the reason for that is because those are the skills in which they're proficient. If they're not, all you're doing is taking the modifier from the ability, and that's it. You're just channeling it through that. So in this case, we can see that he is not proficient in perception. But if I ask this character to roll perception, it would be at a +2. Or we would know that his passive is a 12. It's indicated on his character sheet right down here, but we see that that's the +2 modifier, and then add 10, and that gives us our passive perception. Is he going to be our perception guy in the party? Probably not. We'll come down here. Let's do a quick little matrix on Mulsha Vichegda Bugrush. That's just fun to say, if not a little tongue twister. Mulsha, packing an 18 strength, 13, 18 con, 8 int, 12 whiz, and 10 chaw. Skills. Animal handling, athletics, intimidation, perception, survival. Although we should probably do this. There we go. Ancora. Let's go over to her. Insight. Whoop. Little ahead of myself here. 12 strength, 14 dex, 12 con, 8 int, 17 wisdom, and 14 charisma. skills, insight, medicine, religion, and survival. Lastly, we have Gintilian. Eight, 14, 12, 16, 14, and 10. Now you'll notice that on Gintilian, I swapped where the mod and the score is. You can do either, whatever's more convenient for you. Though, in this case, I prefer putting the score in the larger box. Because your modifier, while it's good to know, by itself is going to be reflected in your skills and your saves. You know, and then, of course, we have your proficiency bonus to take into consideration. But sometimes you need to look at your score in something, because your score will be affected by loss. For instance, there's some monsters that can just drain your score, or can somehow like damage your score for purposes of jumping, either a high jump or a long jump. That's dependent on your strength score. And so having that as a handy reference, which is large, that way you can quickly go to it, maybe that's more convenient for you. But in either case, if you're wondering, whoa, why is something different on this PDF, that's the reason why and what happened. Now, Gintilian, Arcana, History, Investigation, Medicine, Perception, Religion, and Sleight of Hand. Now that we've mechanically defined our characters and not just sharing tales and fluff and backstory, which is important, though we also need to look at the crunch of the characters, it's a little bit easier to see, okay, who's going to be doing what in the party. For example, we look and Heki Lee, blah, blah, blah. Hekali Eos. Is going to be the face of the party. He's the charismatic one. He's the one he doesn't have persuasion as a skill, but naturally he's going to be better at it than others. We come down to Mulsha. He's the brawn. He's the strong man. He's, the body, if you want to say, or the hands even. Now we come over to Ancora, and instead of necessarily focusing on the stats, we can also look at what is the role that character will be playing in the group, aside from just going off of the pure skills. She does have medicine, and she is wisdom-based, so that's good. Also, by being a druid, which is something else that we could have added in the Matrix, but we kind of covered it above. By being a druid in this case, and with no one else necessarily having access to healing spells, let alone a really good medicine, Gintilian can be a good backup nurse. But I think Ancora here is going to be our medic, or our doctor, or our healer, if you want to put it that way. Then we look at Gintilian, and he is the smarty of the group. He knows a lot, and he is very skilled. In this case, which is interesting, because the wizard is almost going to take on a roguish, maybe bard-like role. That we could say either support, or really, in a more defined sense, we have what I call a skill monkey. This is someone who can just go from skill to skill, swooping around. Oh, I know this. Oh, I know this. Oh, let me roll this. And he is good for support in that case. And I put generic roles up here because we can go through then and and break it down further. In the case of battle, who's going to be leading the party in battle? Who are we going to listen to? And we could make two really strong cases. We can say maybe Mulsha, because he can lead the group with his might and muscle. Or maybe we say Gentilian is going to call the shots in battle because of his keen mind and the fact that he can stand back and cast spells into combat and get a wider idea of the battlefield. So we can go through and add in different roles, or if we want to say generic leader, or look at the TMNT, right? We have, the leader, and then kind of the goof off and the scientist, and then Raph was kind of like the strong man, kind of sassy, or we'll use Aang and Korra here. He's what's that character's name? He was from the first series. He didn't have any bending powers, but he says, look, I'm the meat and sarcasm guy. That's his gift. That's what he offers the party. And so in that case, maybe we have a meat and sarcasm guy. That's which, Mulsha might very well fit into. Maybe he's a muscle wizard and he casts fist. Sokka, that's correct, Sir Rhodey. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, so we have our party Sokka. And you can even define the roles of the group among each other as players by saying, I'm going to be like so-and-so. Or, I'm kind of like a Batman of the group. You can make these similes and analogies, metaphors. You can add these labels if you choose. That way it might better define the niche, or the niche that you're trying to fill. But by doing this before the campaign starts, that will help the player get adjusted to what is going to be expected of her or him. For instance, if I'm playing Aang, while I have my own goals, right? I'm this, here, let's go over. I'm this golden dragonborn, and I was born on this island that was filled with only those of my kind. And I have this secret, what is this secret of water and fire interacting with each other. I know that to get along in the party and to serve a particular purpose, I will probably need to come down to my spell sheet and make sure that I have cure wounds or some other restoratives, because maybe my spells that I've just chosen as an individual character, just she wakes up one day and doesn't know what's going to expect. This is what she prepares. Well, now that we're entering into a storyline and she has support from other people and other roles, she might decide to take other spells that day and focus on, I'm the healer, so I don't have to take as many offensive spells because we have Gentilian, who is a wizard, and maybe then the player playing Gentilian says, well, I'm going to take then more offensive spells because of what we have here. Then we'd have other roles of, I'll come down here and I can list some others. Do we have a utility person? Do we have melee or ranged? And in this case, this would be non-magical. Do we have arcane or divine? Or you can even say like primal or natural magical support. Do we have the skill monkey? Do we have the like a trap breaker, or however you wanted to phrase it? These are all different types of roles that can come up in any scenario, in a campaign, in a module, even in a one-shot story that your DM is making up off the top of his or her head. So you balance these out, and you apply these general... I wouldn't want to pin someone down, right? Because you want this living, breathing character that will grow. He or she is three-dimensional, and you can even change the personality of this character over time. So you don't want to put too many pins down to hold that character down. But if the expectation is there that, all right, well, Ankora, you are going to be healing and supporting, then I will generally go in that direction while pursuing my goals. Gentilian... yeah, you're going to be the skill monkey, and you're also going to be, magical range support. battle or otherwise. So now we have this magical utility combat character. Rhodey says the quote-unquote Springer that trips the traps or escapes them while caught off guard. That's my dude. I would argue that unless Gintillion wanted to spend spells doing that, Barbarians make for excellent trap finders. They are not so good at disabling them, at least not before they go off. They're very good at setting them off, and the trap's not really having an effect on them because they're just walking hit point pools. And Barbarians in this edition get a ton of like dex saves to avoid fireballs and other like magical traps and things along those lines, along with DR. So it's a difference of, do you want the person who can be proactive and defeat the traps beforehand, or you want to run the Barbarian down the hall so all the poison darts are already triggered. The Barbarian's down at the end just sort of like, oh yeah, just flexing out the darts and the poison while everyone catches up to him and, maybe slaps one heal on him because it didn't touch him like you would the rest of the characters. And let's see what else. There was one other aspect. Oh, you can look at things like equipment or tool proficiencies. You can look at your features and traits, or say even use meta knowledge. Oh well, Susie's been playing D&D for 6 years. She's the most experienced one. So regardless, like even if she's playing, let's say that she's playing Mulsha here, and she tends to be more reserved, even despite what the character says. Maybe she is a person is reserved. Maybe in a meta sense, all of you other players who maybe combined have 6 years, if that, look to her as the de facto leader. And so if she ran Mulsha as more of a pacifist, just someone that when you made him angry, then you better watch out. Mulsha is the leader, quote unquote, of this group, despite not having that, chest beating, chest out, oh, Mulsha smash kind of a thing going on, because you're going off of the wisdom of the player, not just the aspect of the character that she's piloting in this example. That's why communication is so important, and why a game like this is wonderful for building friendships, for forming bonds between yourself, your friends, family members. Why you learn terms and history and terminology. The way that you speak improves. The way that you conduct yourself can even improve, because you're learning how to process multiple inputs and to find the best solution for problems, for a variety of problems that occur on the fly. That for me is the allure of D&D. This is a thinking person's game. Yes, you're rolling dice. Yes, you can burp, fart, and cuss with the boys and girls at your table. Yes, you're eating pizza, Thai food, or something else along those lines. But you're thinking. You're telling a story. That's the core of it. And here, we've just taken these 4 characters that over the course of a week were randomly generated, well, with the exception of Gintillion, but we know this. These randomly generated characters, and now we've formed a functional party that has the different aspects of what could be useful in combat, in non-combat, in NPC interaction, in taunting, or in this case, the Shadow Monk, very dexterous. This is your infiltrator. Gintillion maybe with magic, but if he's reserving his magic for other uses, maybe for combat or for other skills, well, you use the Shadow Monk, and who can stealth, who has these shadow powers, and that's one of the roles that his pilot takes on. All right, so I am going to get up. I'm going to take a little stretch, drink some water, make sure that everything's fine. I don't have one of those fancy hydration bots that we're seeing in a lot of chats nowadays. Rhodey says, you make me want to rewrite my story. Why you do this? Well, if you're rewriting it and you're feeling inspired, or you can write a tighter story, or maybe it's filling in a gap you missed, hey, do it. You know, the effort may not be something that you want to put in. I'm not saying that's personally, because I do this myself too. I'm like, no, I just spent 2 hours writing this. Why do I do this? And especially if you're at the D&D table and you have a module which is pre-written, let alone your own campaign world, and you set the stage and you bait the hook, or if you don't bait a hook, you either set down, you know, boundaries in a sandbox, or sometimes you got to railroad a party. It happens. I don't recommend doing it often. And your best laid plans just go to pot because the party says ooh squirrel and decide that they want to interact with. It was an NPC that you just, I don't know, generated off the cuff. Whether you actually generated it or they were going shopping and you said, oh yeah, there was this lady wearing a lovely pink dress, and it just turns out that, unbeknownst to you as the DM, one of your players personally or through the character really likes pink. And so they start asking you these questions, and you're generating some content like, oh yeah, you know, the pink was from the neighboring kingdom, and all of a sudden, it's like going to a reference site like Wikipedia. You go to look something up, and remember, don't use that as a primary source, boys and girls. Shame on you. Wikipedia is good, but it shouldn't be a primary source. But you go to Wikipedia, and suddenly you've just lost an hour and a half because you started looking up, you know, like the War of the Roses or something, and then you're finding out, you know, DNA replication. Because that's how sometimes these interactions work. Or you as a DM succumb to it as well. So, okay. I'm going to take maybe, 5-minute break or so. Let's go over to the transition here. Rhodey, alright, so before I go break here, I thought out a plot, but I think it advances too fast into a whole mess of it hitting the Shan. I'm not sure I get that part. I might stretch out the darkness behind the scenes into more books. Well, I mean, I don't know what your overarching plan is. I would try not to think too far ahead if you're thinking about multiple books, because that is, you have to, as a person narrating a story or taking one thing at a time, you have to do just that. Make sure you present a solid story before you do anything else. There's a reason why, for instance, the first Harry Potter book was much shorter than the others, because the author didn't know if that was really going to go anywhere or end up getting published, or what the interest was going to be. So she just wrote a story that itself could exist and go from there. And it just so happens that it went a lot further. So make sure you don't bog yourself down or get mired in the details when your characters have to take one logical step at a time. Okay, I'm going to mute the mic. I'm going to get up, do some stretches, pet the cats, get some water, and then I will be back in just a couple minutes.